If your bike's been sat on the indoor trainer all winter, or you just never check it over, then chances are it's going to need a little bit of attention to make sure it's all working fine and is going to keep you safe. So here's my quick fire 5-minute bike maintenance and check. We've all done it at some point. We throw our cycling kit on and jump on our bike without the slightest care in the world or thought about it. But even just spending a few minutes here and there can help make sure your rides are trouble-free and you don't have any mechanical problems. So to keep things nice and simple, we're going to start at the front of a bike and then work our way towards the back and check the components over as we go. So at the front of the bike, we're looking at control to start with. So we need to check that our shifters and bars are nice and secure and safe, and be quite firm with this. So give everything a good solid movement to make sure everything's in place securely. Then we can move on to the brakes, and we can give the brakes a nice firm pull to make sure that the cables are secure. And we can also check that the wheel spins freely when the brake's off, and that when we pull it, the brake acts. So we can push on that, make sure that engages correctly. Whilst we're pulling the front brake, we can also check that the headset isn't loose by applying the brake and then rocking the bike backwards and forwards to check that there's no free play in any of the bearings. Right, so down to the front wheel now. We can move down to here and you can check that the quick release is nice and secure. So open that and make sure that's nice and secure as well. You can do the same for your through axle if you've got a disc brake system. You can then rock the wheel side to side to check there's no excessive free play. And then again, check it spins nicely. And whilst you're still down at this angle, you can check the brake pads to check there's enough material left on those as well. And if you've got a disc brake system, you can just look through and do the same for that there. And that should be most of the front of the bike checked. And depending on whether you've got a Di2 system like this bike or you've got a mechanical system, now would be a good time to check that your Di2 system is charged up correctly. And in addition to that, if your bike has got a mechanical gear set system, you can just operate the lever one gear either way just to check that it's nice and free and the cable hasn't seized in place. And if you've got a bike stand, you can use that to check your gears over nice and easily when you're at home. And if you haven't, just give them a quick once over when you jump on your bike and head down the road. That way, you're not far from home if you run into any problems. Moving across to the middle of the bike, the first thing we can check here is the saddle. So check left and right and up and down. And again, be fairly firm with this because you're going to put all of your weight on it. So you want to know that that's going to stay in place. And then moving down to our cranks, first we can check that it's going to spin backwards nicely. So we can see that's nice and free. And then we can take the crank arm and just check that there's no free play left and right or side to side with that. And the same thing applies with your pedals. Check that they can spin nice and freely and that there's no excessive play in that system. And on the subject of the chain, keep it nice and simple here. If your chain looks like it's got lots of oil on it, then take an old cloth and wipe some of that excess off. And it looks like it's a bit dry, then just apply a little bit of chain oil by putting it onto the bottom of the rollers whilst pedaling the bike backwards. Keep it nice and simple. And whilst you're pedaling the bike backwards, you'll soon identify if there's any stiff or damaged chain links as well. And onto the rear of the bike, and one of the first areas we can check is the rear derailleur. And whilst at the back here, we can simply look down and check that that's in line with the rest of the gear system. I can see here that looks okay. And then just using our hands, we can check that the derailleur is nice and secure onto the bike and it's got no excessive free play anywhere. The rear brake, we've already checked that as we were at the front of the bike, but we can now look to make sure there's enough material on the brake pads. The rear quick release or through axle, the same as we did with the front. Check that's nice and secure, that's okay. Then we can lift up the bike, check the wheel spins nice and freely. And then that pretty much is most of the bike checked. Right, and on to the final part of our quickfire bike check, and it's pumping up and checking over the tyres. And if you're unsure what pressure to set your tyres to, nearly all tyres have a maximum, a minimum and a recommended pressure stamped on the sidewall of them. But if you're completely in the dark about this, if you're running a tyre and inner tube system, 90 to 100 PSI should get you out of trouble. And if you're using a new tubeless system, somewhere in the region of 60 to 70 PSI should be okay to at least get you going and know that you'll be safe. Also, it's important here to just give your tyres a check over visually to make sure there's no excessive cuts, slices and bulges that are going to cause you some unnecessary punctures that you could otherwise avoid. So there you have it, my 5-minute quick fire bike maintenance and safety check. And whilst you don't need to do this every single time you ride, the more often you can do it, the better, and it will help keep your cycling trouble-free. But importantly, If you do find any issues with your bike when checking it over, you need to make sure and fix them quickly before you head out for your ride. And if you're unsure how to do that, then it might be a trip down to your local bike shop to get that sorted. Hope you enjoyed my quick fire maintenance and safety check. And if there's any other maintenance videos you'd like to see, let us know in the comments section down below. And of course, if you have liked this video, give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing to GCN Tech. See you later.